just talking about this matchup specifically, Sierra, Netherlands and Team USA have both made top 16 in the prior years of the World
Mhm.
Cup. So right now it's a big matchup. And let's take a look at Netherlands player here. Sander Tiggelman has one finish in the 2023 season at the Utrecht special event, going 6-3. And you can see we're not going to have the Paul Chua mirror this time around, because instead it's a Trick Room team with Ursaluna, Blood Moon, and Dustclops.
Yeah, looking at Sanders' pass, been playing online for quite a little bit, but last season was actually his first IRL season, being able to get points at 4 different events with 4 different teams. So, not gonna quite stick to well, not gonna quite use what was just used at that past event. So I love to see that too, especially to managing to go 6-3 at your first regional size event is absolutely fantastic. So looking over at the team, the fact that we are going to be able to see this Trick Room coming out. Trick Room is one of those teams that sometimes it thrives in certain metas, sometimes it's a little bit lackluster, but the introduction of Dusclops back into the game, as well as this new Blood Moon Ursaluna, being able to have a really strong special attacker that can thrive in this Trick Room situations is fantastic. And we will see that Water Ogre Pawn, which has kind of been falling out of meta by a landslide, actually. It's completely tumble down the stairs in the meta game that we're looking at, but gonna still be using that. It's definitely a Pokemon that has that utility, being able to have that follow me and that water absorb. So still utility to it.
Yeah, Wellspring Mask, black and blue and red all over apparently in in the meta game here. But just seeing, I think it might be important in this specific matchup, as if you have Ogerpon next to Dustclops, you are able to follow me, redirect the attack away from Dustclops, who's able to set up Trick Room at that point, and it should be very exciting on how this Ursaluna matches up, because don't want to throw any spoilers out there for you, but shall see on the other side. Asthon also agrees Ursaluna Blood Moon with a Life Orb is a pretty strong bring to the World Cup.
Yeah, both players might be bringing this Blood Moon Ursaluna, but there's still so many differences between these teams and with the players themselves. Talked about Sander being someone who just started doing the IRL circuit last year. Whereas when you're looking at Asthon, this is a player that for North America has been around for what seems like almost forever at this point, even dating back to competing at the 2014 World Championships. And of course, having a variety of accomplishments since then, being able to claim the LAIC Championship title not once, but twice, and 2 regional championships along the way. So looking over at the team, we will see the different take on this Trick Room with that Farigiraf with the Armor Tail that is so nice in stopping priority to make sure that your own Trick Room can go up without any issues.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be important to note in this matchup, that Farigiraf and Dustclops are the Trick Room setters for Sander and Asthon. And it looks like Ashton's team can actually kind of function, I don't want to say better outside of Trick Room, but it seems like it is potentially trained to deal with either a Tailwind mode with Tornadus and Urshifu, or a Trick Room mode. So it's more of a hybrid option than Sander's end.
Yeah, being able to have this Torn to set up the Tailwind, but also that Rain Dance onto your Shifu, not going for the Water Ogre Pond, but instead sticking to the Rapid Strikes. It's definitely a way to be putting on a lot of pressure, but he does need to be careful considering that there is the Water Ogre Pond with that Water Absorb over onto the other side. So if there is the potential of not wanting to necessarily play into the Trick Room game, but instead finding a way around it to maybe thrive in different conditions, you need to be watching out for a couple of pinholds like that heading into our first game. But I'm really intrigued to see where our trainers' minds are at and what strategy they want to do, considering it looks like Sanders a little bit more invested in this straight Trick Room, whereas Asthon has the 2 different modes that he can kind of go for.
Let's see where their minds are with their mind's eye. Ursaluna, Blood Moons on each side. So let's get into it. Game 1 in this best of 3 week 5 matchup. Netherlands and USA. Asthon Cox versus Sander Tiggelman. Asthon on top of your screen with Urshifu and Fluttermane. Sander on the bottom with Ogerpon and Dustclops.
Right away, we get to see that Dustclops over on Sanders' end. Considering Dustclops is the Trick Room setter, it's safe to say that that might be a potential looking into it, especially paired next to this Ogerpon, which with that Follow Me can make sure that this Dustclops can stay safe, as well the Urshifu on the other side, not necessarily looking to be too great of a spot, considering if you're wanting to target a water type attack into the other side, a redirected Follow Me can definitely be eliminating that. So sure, there might not be any pressure of damage over onto Ashtyn's end this time around, but Sander looking to be in a great spot to be setting up the board positioning he would like.
Don't mind me, Sierra. I'm just over here jamming out to the AI Professor theme song. So just enjoying myself, as this should be a really exciting matchup as Fergraf switches into the Urshifu slot. Ashtyn anticipating that the Trick Room will be set up in this turn, since Dusclops is relatively free to go for it. Decides to terrestrialize his Flutter Mane on this turn. That is a choice Specs Terra Fairy Flutter Mane. Ogerpon, follow me, saying hit this Moonblast in my direction, but at what cost? No, it's Dazzling Gleam instead. That's going to be a spread attack, so the follow me is irrelevant, bringing Ogerpon down to half health, and Dusclops still very bulky, is safe to click the Trick Room, twisting the dimensions. Now those slower Pokemon are going to move first.
Couple reasons why I like the Dazzling Gleam as opposed to the Moonblast. First, the follow me set up the Trick Room is the classic tale of Trick Room-esque, but as well, not committing to trying to get one solid KO onto something, like trying to be eliminating that Ogerpon from play the first turn around, deny Sander a free swap into the Blood Moon Ursaluna into the back, and bringing in the Fergraf into that the Urshifu slot that was otherwise useless is really, really nice, because now you're threatening the chance of actually reversing that Trick Room if you want to try and play outside of it and deny Sander that opportunity of going with that Trick Room sweeper.
And we do have the benefit of seeing Sander's profile here, so we know that Iron Hands and Ursaluna are in the back. That makes this Fergraf matchup much safer than if Chi-Yu was in the back, because Fergraf, one of the worst matchups can be the Chi-Yu. There is a Psychic, though, however, into Ogerpon, knocking it out. Sander losing his first Pokemon of the game. Flutter Mane with a single target Terra Fairy Dazzling Gleam into Dusclops is just not enough, bringing it down to pretty much where it was last turn.
Not wanting to reverse the Trick Room, instead just dealing some damage, and of course that choice specs being locked into the Dazzling Gleam is not going to be dealing nearly enough to the Dusclops, especially with that additional health that it managed to regain thanks to that Pain Slit. Now this will be the opportunity for the swap, and that's going to be the Blood Moon Ursaluna and all of its horrifying glory hitting the field.
Yes, Ursaluna Blood Moon coming out in the Part 1 of the DLC that we had last month, is a special attacker compared to the physical attacking Ursaluna you saw in a Pokemon Legends Arceus. And these special attacks can really just absolutely destroy the other side if you're not ready, especially with a Terra Normal boost, which it looks like Sander is hovering. Life Orb added to that as well. Just all the multipliers makes it almost impossible to take a Blood Moon from Blood Moon Ursaluna.
Yeah, that move being introduced can be doing heaps of damage and looking to be putting on nothing but the most of offense here with the terrestrialization. This is one of the things that makes this Blood Moon Ursaluna so terrifying, is the sheer damage output it could be having once it gets to be in this Trick Room environment. The Nightshade, of course, that's just going to be a solid, consistent amount of damage considering it's based off the HP, but now the Blood Moon targeted into this Fergraf.
Fergraf goes down without being able to reset the Trick Room. So Sander had a tough choice on that turn. Do you want to double target into Flutter Mane to knock it out, because that is the Terra Pokemon on the other side, or get rid of the other Trick Room setter from Ashtyn's end? He chose to get rid of Fergraf, bringing Dusclops and Ursaluna both down very low. If I'm counting correctly, I believe there's one more turn of Trick Room left, and we know that Flutter Mane can't protect. So the question is, what does Ashtyn bring in here to survive this last turn of Trick Room?
Well, looking into it, if you weren't necessarily wanting to bring into play into the Trick Room, there could have had different options in the back, but Ashtyn did bring his own Blood Moon Ursaluna to the fray. So this can start being where we get to see exactly how these Pokemon are trained, considering Ashtyn can also thrive in this Trick Room situation. If his Ursaluna is slower, therefore acting first in all of this, that could be a really, really dangerous situation. Dusclops having to take a moment to kind of figure out exactly where it would like to be going. Game Split would be a way to be regaining the health, but that's not really going to be helping the Blood Moon Ursaluna over on Sander's end at all.
Yeah, definitely not. And this is a precarious position for both Ashtyn and Sander. You want to get the game one advantage, right? You want to have that going into the next game. And because you lack information on how these Ursaluna are trained at this point, not necessarily safe to just click whatever you want. But Ashtyn will swap the Fluttermane out so that at one point when Trick Room expires, Fluttermane will go back to being the fastest Pokemon on the field. Pain Split goes into Ursaluna's Protect on Ashtyn's end, so it's not going to do any damage, not lowering its HP at all. And the Hyper Voice also hitting that Protect, but is a Terra Normal Life Orb boosted Hyper Voice into Urshifu enough to take it out? No, it will hang on thanks to that Focus Sash.
Yeah, not going to be one of those sets boosting something like the Mystic Water for the additional output, since it does have the option of getting additional damage output with the Rain with the Torn, opting to go into that Focus Sash instead, which is going to be so useful in that situation as the Ursaluna staying nice and safe. However, I think there was still the one more turn of Trick Room, so still a tricky situation to navigate, but the Urshifu over on Ashtyn's end, it does have this Aqua Jet, so can be picking something off if it would like to, and the Ursaluna is just going to swap.
It swaps out into the Fluttermane. We know that's the last Pokemon remaining on Ashtyn's end. Has taken a little bit of chip damage. Urshifu does not go for an Aqua Jet in this last turn. Trick Room just protecting instead. The Pain Split will bring Fluttermane down to half HP, recovering up more HP on the Dusclops' end, and Ursaluna saying, all right, you want to switch your Fluttermane into this Blood Moon, go for it. That's obviously enough for a knockout.
Oh, 100%. And with that Mind's Eye ability, of course, being able to hit into this Ghost type with that normal type attack, but now won't be able to use that on the next turn, as that was the last and final turn of Trick Room. So the Fluttermane does go down, but at least now you have the swap in, and you do have this Urshifu that is faster and can be pressuring on this turn. It still begs the question, though, of how this Ursaluna is trained. It is going to be then active burst for the Dusclops, but between the two Ursalunas, be interesting. But at least Ashtyn can just be threatening the KO onto that opposing Ursaluna at any point.
Maybe Ashtyn is one of the players who decided he didn't want to sit through the Blood Moon Ursaluna cutscene 800 times for the soft resetting, and has a regularly fast Ursaluna, right? Not low on its speed stat. So understanding that his Ursaluna might not be trained to be as slow as possible, you don't even take the risk of a speed tie. And now that Trick Room is over, you can be relatively confident that your Ursaluna with your spread attack would be moving first before him. But Surging Strike's obviously going to hit first as the fastest Pokemon on the field, and with those 3 critical hits, he's going to need all of them into this Dusclops to take it down. So Sander will lose his Trick Room Pokemon here in game 1. Dusclops is down, and all he has left is a 10 HP Ursaluna on the field as of right now. We see Ashtyn's Ursaluna Blood Moon moving before Sanders. Doesn't necessarily confirm that it is faster, but if that is how Ashtyn is playing, we anticipate that that is the strategy.
Yeah, now it's just going to be the Iron Hands left over on Xander's end. That one Pokemon hiding off in the back. Looking at this, the Urshifu is so low. And of course, the Surging Strike's hitting to the Iron Hands, not necessarily the most damage, but that's just going to be the Protect on this turn to keep things safe.
Yeah, down to his last Pokemon right now in this game 1 for Sander. And the Drain Punch from Iron Hands goes towards the Protect on Ursaluna's, or excuse me, Urshifu. We got 2 U Pokemon. URS, actually. You don't really see that too often, so slipping up a bit here, but Ashtyn definitely in a confident position with this Surging Strike. It's going to be critically hit 3 times into Iron Hands. Not even bringing it down under half HP, though, showing just how bulky this Iron Hands is trained. And if Iron Hands has any speed on him, no, actually Ursaluna is faster than Iron Hands. That's how speedy this Blood Moon is. Earth Power taking the knockout and Ashtyn taking game 1.
Knowing that this Ursaluna has some speed too can explain earlier on in the match when we did see that Trick Room situation, that if both of them were the most minimal of minimal speeds, that maybe it wasn't something that Ashtyn wanted to go for, knowing there wasn't going to be a speed tie, but he would just straight out lose. So being able to have that later on, just that easy target, double up into the Iron Hand, that is going to be Ashtyn to take that game 1.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be exciting to see what Sander's adjustments here are in game 2, because Ashtyn is one of the best players on Team USA. So obviously it's a uphill battle now that you are down game 2 here. You've lost the first one, need to win the next 2 to give Netherlands the victories. Dusclops Iron Hands for Sander, and Fluttermane Ursaluna Blood Moon on Aston's side.
So opting to either leave the Water Ogerpon at home or have it in the back for later on, going to be bringing out the Iron Hands instead. This is another way to try and make sure you can be setting up the Trick Room that you want, thanks to something like that Fake Out. Where I'm a little worried is the fact that Aston does have the Frigoraph in the back, so if that is an opt for a swap in, well, this Fake Out's going to be doing absolutely nada, but maybe not wanting to swap, considering Mon on the field at this moment and wanting to put out some pressure onto this Dusclops. Dusclops, of course, can have this opportunity to be setting up. No swaps means that the Blood Moon Ursaluna is not doing anything this time around, as now a huge hit into the Iron Hands.
Yeah, Aston does not terrestrialize on turn 1 like he did in game 1. If he did, the additional same type attack bonus, boost to that Moonblast might have been enough to knock out the Iron Hands from full HP. So Dusclops is able to safely get the Trick Room set up, and now the Solar Pokemon like Dusclops and Iron Hands will be moving before Aston's Pokemon.
Yeah, and being able to have this Trick Room be a lot of pressure off put, especially too, since the Iron Hands couldn't have an opportunity to hit into the Ursaluna last time around, but a Drain Punch into that Pokemon would be a great chance to be getting a lot of health back at this point. Fluttermane, not one of those Pokemon that thrives in Trick Room whatsoever, swapping out into this Frigoraph.
And Fluttermane definitely has to fear the Heavy Slam on the Iron Hands slot there, so you know that Frigoraph would take that hit better. Nightshade is not going to hit Frigoraph, as they are both at, or as the Ghost move there on the normal type. Drain Punch goes into Ursaluna's Protect, so Aston has weathered this turn 1 well so far. So it's a couple more turns of Trick Room for Aston to get through.
Yeah, slowly but surely. He got through all the Trick Room turns the first time around. We'll have to see if he can do it the second, as the Frigoraph now a Pokemon that definitely fares a lot better in Trick Room. We got to see the first game that he didn't opt to reverse the Trick Room, instead just playing through it, being able to fire off something like a Psychic and also having access to Dazzling Gleam with this Frigoraph. So it could be a Giraffe on the offensive to try and deal with this Iron Hands.
Now, that is another Pokemon that we know can be typically slow, but you would assume Frigoraph is actually probably naturally faster than the rest of the Pokemon on the field. So it might be a difficult spot for Aston to be in, where Frigoraph likes to be in Trick Room, likes to be a slow Pokemon, but because of just who else is active on the field right now, could potentially be moving last on this turn. Aston will switch the Fluttermane into the Ursaluna slot. Will-O-Wisp landing onto Frigoraph. Can you have a little bit of residual damage every turn? Not relevant for the burn because it is a special attacker. And he goes with a Heavy Slam into the Fluttermane switch in. Run the imaginary Oko graphic because that's a one-hit KO.
Fantastic call there. That was previously that Blood Moon Ursaluna that had protected the last time around. Aston swapping out to try and make this Fluttermane, quote-unquote, take that hit. Would have done absolutely nothing. But instead, Sander calling the swap and hitting the Heavy Slam into there to get rid of it. Now we will see a Pokemon adjustment, though, going into this game, too, from Aston. It will be that Fire Ogerpon.
Yeah, I like that adjustment from Sander because he's playing to win, right? He's not playing to not lose. He made a call. If I Drain Punch into this Ursaluna slot, I'm going to get punished if Fluttermane goes in. And you know what? I probably don't get the knockout from full anyway on Ursaluna as a one-hit KO, so I might as well go for Heavy Slam to cover both of those bases. So I really like that change on Sanders and a change of plan that Aston was not expecting. So now that Sander has a couple turns of Trick Room remaining, you know that Hearthflame Ogerpon is in trouble for the rest of the duration of Trick Room.
Now we're seeing a terrestrialization in this mid-game, and it is going to be that Hearthflame Mask Ogerpon. That mask cracks me up every single time. I'm so angry and looking to be putting on this pressure. That'll be the embody aspect and getting an attack boost going on forward. Nightshade, the predetermined amount of damage, just a little bit of chunk into that Ogerpon, as it's going to be left alone. The double up into the Frigoraph this time around, as we will see that Drain Punch recovery on the Iron Hands.
And I think that's actually just enough to activate Frigoraph Citrus Berry, recovering up 25% more of its HP. But wherever this Ivy Cudgel goes, even if it's a double target, here's Psychic into Iron Hands. It hangs on at 4 HP, but this Ivy Cudgel, Sander might like a switch in so he can get something else on the field right now, but no, Dusclops hangs on at 19 as well. So both of Sander's Pokemon are in the red. At least Dusclops has some Pain Split options on this turn with the Ogerpon, but it might have been nice for Iron Hands to go down to, let's say, Ursaluna come in and sweep the last turn of Trick Room.
Especially, too, this is the last turn of Trick Room, and this Dusclops, as Dusclops don't have a way to protecting. So if you can take it out, that'll be Trick Room gone for Sander for the rest of the game. Pain Split into the Farigiraf, though. That's going to be quite a decent amount of health brought up into this. And now the Iron Hands targeting into that Giraffe is going to make sure that the Dusclops is safe for the next time around. And that'll be health recovered yet again. So Farigiraf eliminated. Now Dusclops, with a bit more health, can try and have a chance to reset the Trick Room.
Sure, the dimensions go back to normal, but Sander did call correctly the Spiky Shield and completely ignore Ogerpon. Didn't take any effect damage there from hitting into the Spiky Shield. So this Ursaluna will come out. We know from the last game that it's faster than both of Sander's Pokemon on the field.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Normally, if you see an Ursaluna out of Trick Room, it's like, what are you doing there, bud? But at this point, too, outspeeding the Iron Hands with the Dusclops, you can be putting on so much offensive pressure and have this chance to be taking down the Dusclops before there's any opportunity to be setting up a Trick Room, especially with a double up potentially into that slot. And the Iron Hands just having been sticking around in the game, as opposed to having the fake out pressure to try and stop anything from going down. It's not going to help whatsoever, as we see this Ivy Cudgel to start things out.
That's +1 Ivy Cudgel into Dusclops, more than enough to knock it out. So Sander cannot reset Trick Room in this game. Hyper Voice, obviously, single target into that low health Iron Hands would be enough. So that's a double KO to the side of Ashton's benefit. Now Sander's going to have to bring in his last two Pokemon, which, as we can see, is an Ursaluna Blood Moon of its own and the Ogerpon Wellspring Mask, which could, in theory, match up better into the Hearthflame Mask.
Yeah, that Wellspring Mask Ogerpon just hiding in the back to apply some of this late game pressure, of course, having its own Ivy Cudgel that and be targeting super effective into the other end here, or at least dealing some good damage considering you can have the crit chance. So it's still tough though, because you know your Ursaluna is going to be slower, and this Ogerpon on Ashton's end built for this offense.
Yeah, kind of wavering back and forth on Sanders, and what do I do with Ursaluna? Do I protect? Do I go for Blood Moon? I think overall Ogerpon seems really nice, as you have the water typing Ivy Cudgel into the opposing fire types Ogerpon on the other side, but decides not to go for that yet, just clicking Spiky Shield on this first turn in case the Ivy Cudgel goes into that slot, protecting from Ursaluna as well. So Sander playing it safe, saying, what is Ashton opting for? What do you want to really target down? The answer is Horn Leech into my Ursaluna, who is currently a ground type. That would be super effective. And then the Hyper Voice as a spread attack. So now that you know Ashton is prioritizing down the Ursaluna, or at least thinking about it, how do you adjust?
I mean, one way is this Terastallization to make sure it's just going to be a neutral hit that you're taking instead of this Horn Leech hitting for super effective damage into it. But you still have to figure out where you want to be hitting best on the way back. Being able to hit into the fire type Ogerpon on the other end is nice, but then you have to be threatened still by the Ursaluna. So definitely tricky, but priority number one is making sure you can even make it to your own turn with this Ursaluna.
And it's so scary too, because you think, oh, if I just go Ogerpon, if I Terastallize that, I get a special defense boost. I can take the Hyper Voice much better. But then you're just a water type against the Horn Leech that that Ogerpon Hearthflame Mask has on the other side. So Sander deciding, yes, it is time to fight fire with water on this Ogerpon Wellspring Mask and Body Aspect, boosting its special defense by 1 stage, which will definitely help out against the Ogerpon, or the Ursaluna. But Ivy Cudgel doesn't target down into the Ogerpon slot. It brings Ursaluna down into the red, and here is a water type Ivy Cudgel, super effective onto either of Ashton's Pokemon, deciding to bring it into the Ursaluna with the critical hit, bringing Ashton down to 1 Pokemon remaining. And now you will have Sander with 1 hit on his end. That's a super effective Earth Power. Ogerpon is down, and we will be going to game 3.
Fantastically played at the end. I was a little worried once that Trick Room expired and Ashton had these big hitters onto Sander's team. But no, well done. And showing that both of these Ogerpons that we talked about have kind of fallen off a little bit. Definitely still have quite a bit of utility. So I'm really interested for this game 3. Having that gone before Trick Room was actually up was definitely an option in that later game that was just then taken away. So it'll be really interesting to see in this game 3 how things are done. If it's going to be that Wellspring Ogerpon in the back yet again for Sander, but changes, a huge change actually coming out. No Trick Room mode in sight coming out from Sander, but the Fergraph for that pressure on Ashton's end.
Just going straight damage on Sander's lead. Chi-Yu, Fluttermane, a patented combination, lowering the special defense of all the other Pokemon on the field. And then Fergraph, Ogerpon for Ashton. Sierra, this is Fergraph's worst nightmare because the best Pokemon the best Pokemon Sander has to deal with Fergraph is Chi-Yu.
Yeah, it's definitely a case where both trainers made a really big adjustment heading into this game 3. And for one, panning out great as well. There's a lot of pressure that could be employed with this mode. The potential of a very early KO, all things considered. And that's the worst thing that could happen when you're looking at Fergraph that's looking to maybe try and let your Pokemon thrive. Follow me. If there is a single target attack, that Ogerpon is looking to soak it all up. And first off, it will be the Moonblast.
Now, it does take that away. Special attack drop, obviously not mattering, but can the Heat Wave be enough to bring it down? Yes, the double target into Ogerpon knocks out Ashton's lead Pokemon there. It does bring Fergraph down to pretty much right under half HP, which is where it wants to be to activate the Citrus Berry. And Ashton's the slow player this time around as he locks in the Trick Room, and now he will have 4 more turns of Trick Room with either slower Saluna, and there it is, try to click Hyper Voice, Blood Moon, Earth Power, whatever it wants. It's the slowest thing on the field right now.
This otherwise, all things considered, speedy Ursaluna now being the slower thing is hilarious, with Ashton now playing right into that Trick Room mode that his team employs, and this Ursaluna can put a lot of pressure on. Sander didn't take any damage in that last turn, but the Chi-Yu and the Fluttermane being targeted down. I mean, even something like a helping hand into the Blood Moon Ursaluna to take the most advantage of a powerful Earth Power or Hyper Voice could be devastating.
Yeah, and Sander having in the back, because we have the benefit of seeing Iron Hands and Dusclops, so can potentially try to make it through these turns of Trick Room, or hey, even resetting Trick Room with his own Dusclops, bringing those faster Pokemon to the benefit there. But no switches from Ashton's end, going to stay in. Now it is time to Terrasilize. It will be Ursaluna Blood Moon turning into the normal typing, Terra Normal, Life Orb, Blood Moon boost. It's just an incredible output of damage you can have. Chi-Yu will protect, however, so if the target goes into that slot, he's not going to get any damage. Fergraph with the Dazzling Gleam, hardly going to do anything to the Dusclops, so the real question is, where does he attack? Ursaluna doesn't even have to choose if you can just lock in the Hyper Voice as a spread attack this turn. How well can Dusclops take this hit? It looks like it is not enough to survive a 2-hit KO, so Ashton can just try to click the Hyper Voice again next turn.
And that's the problem here too. The Dusclops, it is super, super slow, but if you were looking for something like reversing this Trick Room, since it is heavy negative priority, you're never going to get to that point considering this Ursaluna and how it can pressure you right now. So you can attempt a Pain Split to try and get a little bit of recovery back, but you already got to see just how much damage was dealt. So maybe you won't quite survive the turn, but at least if you can start chunking down this Blood Moon Ursaluna, maybe that's good enough.
Yeah, you know that the Dusclops has access to the Pain Split like we've seen here, so it will be able to bring Ursaluna down just a little bit lower on its health, but I don't think it'll be enough to survive this attack, this double spread attack. Chi actually got hit by a critical hit, Dazzling Gleam, and then there's the Hyper Voice knocking out Chi, and Dusclops actually does hang on thanks to the HP it was able to recover from the Pain Split. So that's pretty huge for Sander. Now he has to decide between Iron Hands and Fluttermane, and the choice is Iron Hands.
Yeah, the Iron Hands coming in, of course, you have absolutely no utility of this fake out considering the Farigiraf on the other side. But we are in Trick Room, and this is where Sander's other Pokemon might be able to start thriving a little bit more, considering that they tend to be slower than Ashton's Pokemon just kind of all around. Notably, the Iron Hands and the Blood Moon Ursaluna interaction that we got to see earlier on in things. So even if we're playing in Ashton's wheelhouse at the moment, there is space for Sander to try and start gaining some momentum back.
And with how much the Ursaluna lost in HP from the Pain Split, the lower its health creeps down, the more likely Drain Punch will be able to knock it out at that point. So Iron Hands is feeling very confident right now for Sander while Trick Room is up, knowing that it does underspeed Ursaluna, and Ashton is also aware of that issue, so he will protect instead. Pain Split brings Dusclops back over half HP. It's such a huge move, and the double up with Wild Charge onto Farigiraf, knocking it out.
Such a nice play coming out from Sander, knowing that, hey, this Blood Moon Ursaluna is faster, so going to be moving after my Iron Hands. The Protect here could seem really likely, so instead of targeting into the Farigiraf, make sure that you're not going to be getting hit with some Dazzling Gleams or some Psychics, and making sure that it is just eliminated from play. So having that double up and an opportunity to be getting more health on the Dusclops is super, super nice. Now the Fluttermane comes out, and it's starting to look that despite this being Ashton's Trick Room, that maybe he's a little bit on the back foot. This is the final turn of Trick Room, though.
And that's definitely something that Ashton has to worry about, as remember, it's been so important every time it's brought up. Fluttermane is choice specs, does not have access to Protect on this turn, and it is the slowest Pokemon on the field. So Dusclops will land the Will-O-Wisp into Ursaluna on Ashton's side, getting some residual damage every turn. There is the Heavy Slam into Fluttermane, and it never stood a chance. Fluttermane goes down to that one-hit KO, and Sander is feeling really confident right now. But an Earth Power in response, even with the Life Orb boost, is not enough to knock out the Iron Hands.
No, Iron Hands is built, and Heavy Diesel Fist going to be taking that hit better. A little bit of burn damage coming on through, as that's going to be the last turn of Trick Room. This Ursaluna is all by itself, the last and final Pokemon over on Ashton's end. It can be trying to fire off some powerful attacks, but it is on a little bit of a timer now thanks to that burn. Would have to make up a lot of headway.
Yeah, it's definitely a really tough spot for Ashton right now. He will move first. This is a Terra Normal boosted Hyper Voice into both of these Pokemon. Not enough for the Dusclops KO. He takes down Iron Hands, but he would have needed a critical hit to knock out the Dusclops on that turn. He goes to the Nightshade, obviously not affecting into a normal type, so Dusclops really can't do anything at this point to Ursaluna, since you can't even click the Pain Split either. You do heal up the Ursaluna. But now it's time for Sander's Fluttermane to come in and sweep up this game and give Netherlands a victory.
Yeah, the fastest Ursaluna in the world is not going to be able to stand up to this Fluttermane and the speed that it has. So being so low, that is going to be a canceled match. Congratulations to Sander. That was a really, really well fought set. That game 3, the different approaches both trainers made into that, the fact that they were both on the same wavelength of, hey, we drastically want to change this, was fantastic. But I think overall, in the end, just having a team that seemed a little bit better made for the Trick Room mode, and Sander was going to be at a better position regardless of what way Ashton tried to go to with this Trick Room or not.